Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 5 of FX's Shogun, entitled Broke It to the Fist. The title here, it refers to a conversation that Toranaga has with his son Nagakado early in the episode. As I'm sure you all will recall, Episode 4 ended with Nagakado making the rash decision to butcher Ishido's right-hand man, Jozen, along with everyone else who he came there with. Really gross, grotesque scene that was absolutely fucking awesome. But in this episode, Toranaga and Nagakado share a great scene. Just one of many great scenes in this episode where Toranaga compares Nagakado to a falcon. He talks about how falcons can be broken to any fist as can any man. You have some men that you can aim right at prey straight from the fist, and others need like a lure or something of that nature. He essentially says that Nagakado is manipulable, yeah, and has been manipulated because he's essentially just a trained falcon that is being pointed at prey on behalf of someone else. This allows the true hunters to stay hidden and for Nagakado to essentially be like a fall guy. Toranaga then removes the command of the cannon regiment from his son and later gives it to Yabushiga's nephew, Omi, and we're going to talk about that later too, trust me. There's a whole lot to discuss about this episode, but that's the episode title for you. Now, folks, this is the episode I've been waiting on. I thought this episode was outstanding. There were several great moments, several great scenes shared between characters, incredibly compelling plot developments, some humor. Even Blackthorn didn't annoy me in this episode. I'm pretty excited to talk about this one because there's a lot to do, so let's talk about it. And I want to start by kind of circling back real quick to the title of the episode and the concept that Toranaga presents of being able to essentially manipulate others into doing your bidding. To use Toranaga's own metaphor, I feel like he's being a fist right now and is breaking Yabushiga to his fist and using him in the same way that Yabushiga and his nephew, that he accused them of using Nagakado. Like, one of the most interesting developments in this episode is the situation with Yabushiga wanting to know who is spying on behalf of Toranaga. We learn who the real spy is. It's a trusted samurai of Toranaga who's playing dress up as like a fisherman type, I don't know, like a lowly, lowborn kind of guy. And Toranaga tasked him with essentially giving Yabushiga a fall guy after he requested that he just serve himself up. Like, please allow me to kill myself for you. Like, I love how quickly people are willing to give their lives on this show. Like, oh my God, your soup's too hot, let me kill myself over it. But at the same time, and trust me, I'm about to connect these two things. We have the fallout from Nagakado's attack last week. Toranaga confronts Yabushiga about it. He's his usual sycophantic self. So much so that he throws his own nephew under the bus and is like, you know what? I saw the motherfuckers drinking together. You know what? Let me go punish him for you. And Toranaga's like, punish him? He's going to draw our enemies to us. Shout out to him. He rocks. I'm going to make him in control and the leader of the cannon regiment. And Guys, I don't believe for 1 second that Toranaga is truly grateful for what Omi did or what he believes that Omi tricked Nagakado into doing. He's breaking Yabashika to his fist. Like, you saw how upset Yabashika was about that promotion for his nephew in a later scene. And then, here's where I'm gonna tie it all together, I promise. Yabashika is about to deliver his fall guy as the spy, and it's the gardener. Well, I say he's about to deliver. He is delivered, his fall guy, and it's the gardener that was killed over Blackthorn's pheasant. And yes, we will be talking about that as well. And at first I thought, oh wow, well that's convenient that they just so happened to have someone who was dead that they could blame this on and just throw some evidence in the house. They did the earthquake, shook it loose, boom, great idea. But when Mariko reveals that the gardener volunteered himself to go bury the pheasant, knowing full well the consequences, but can we not also consider the possibility that he also knew that if he did this, it would allow Toranaga to serve him up as that fall guy, as the spy? It's kind of like, again, same as the samurai who's the actual spy. He was like, allow me to give myself up for you. I'll present myself as the spy. They probably told the gardener, like, the gardener's already like, look, I'm old and I'm tired. I can't deal with this fucking pheasant anyway. Everybody voted to get rid of this motherfucker. And then I bet you the samurai spy was probably like, you know what? If you really would like to honor Toranaga, we also could stand to use somebody who, to be the fall guy is this spy, who I actually am. So, kind of like two birds, one stone, man. Like, you get rid of the pheasant, everybody loves you, you gotta die anyway. Once you do that, you might as well also be our fall guy. And it was probably that guy's honor to bury that pheasant and be killed and be the fall guy as the spy. And it would track with how their culture sees value in an honorable death that has meaning. It helps Toranaga look even more like a cunning tactician. And it bolsters the episode's theme of breaking someone to your fist. So like that, I just thought all of that wrapped up really, really well. It all tied in together really well. Yeah, I thought that was just really well executed. I really like that the episode motivated me to think in this manner. Like, it's just a testament to how well, like I said, all of that was executed. I don't go into each of these videos planning to compare this show to Game of Thrones, but I mean, we saw this kind of stuff on there all the time. Like, this whole dynamic kind of reminds me of, and it's been a while since I've seen the episode, so I can't go into great detail. But there was a moment where Tyrion was Hand of the King, so it was fairly early, probably season 4 or something like that, or earlier, and definitely earlier. Yeah, definitely earlier. But he had something where he had like 3 different plans that he told the 3 different people, so that when it was revealed that someone had snitched about his plan, he knew specifically who it was because he told each of them 3 different stories. Like, that kind of trickery is kind of what I feel is at play here, and it just makes me think of Game of Thrones, which, I mean, not an insult at all to say you remind me of Game of Thrones. So, but the next thing I want to talk about is how we finally got Mariko's backstory, which I mentioned I was interested in an earlier video. And then also how post-pounding and riveting that entire scene and sequence of scenes was. Like, this sequence of scenes probably, I don't know, it felt fast. I don't know, it might have ate up like 15 minutes for all I know, but this great sequence of scenes. So this also ties in with how cultural differences and Blackthorn's stubborn reluctance to adapt to the Japanese culture is just causing more problems and bigger problems. So Buntaro returns at the beginning of this episode. We learned that some Ronin helped him escape, but by the time he made it back to Edo, only 2 of the Ronin were left. So he had a rough go of it. I think he said it took him 20 days to get there or something like that. Toranaga informs Mariko that her and Buntaro will be living with Blackthorn. Side note, I loved when Buntaro and Toranaga arrived, and Nagakado was like, Mariko, look, your husband's here. She's like, oh man, I just fucked this white guy yesterday. This is terrible. But this creates an obvious tension because 1, Buntaro is an asshole. 2, Buntaro hates Blackthorn. And 3, like I just said, Mariko fucked Blackthorn the instant that she thought he was dead. I posted my video late for episode 4, obviously. But apparently in the time since episode 4 aired, the show's creators did in fact confirm that Mariko and Blackthorn had sex, because like I said, there was a lot of confusion out there. If any of you watched my episode 4 video at the time I posted it, you probably just like, this motherfucker. We already established that it was Mariko. But like I said, I try to stay away from that kind of shit until I get my video out, because I don't want anything that anyone else says to influence me or to add any kind of color to anything that I'm saying or impact me at all. But anyway, let's see, where was I? So they're all having dinner. And it quickly turns to this dick measuring contest between Blackthorn and Buntaro. Buntaro talks shit about how Blackthorn eats his noodles. Blackthorn then, that's not a bad insult. Like, oh, he slurps his noodles like a monkey. All right, fuck you, whatever, no big deal. But then Blackthorn escalates the fuck out of it by saying Buntaro drinks like a woman, which in that culture at that time, if Mariko had translated that how Blackthorn actually said it, he might have been decapitated in the moment. But Mariko, the god level translator, she doesn't quite word it that way. As they continue to drink, you can see Mariko's concern increasing. Blackthorn asks to hear the story of how Buntaro escaped Osaka. I'd like to hear that story too, actually, or see it. That sounds interesting. 20 days, only 2 Ronin left in him. He come back all these scars and shit. Cuts and shit on his face. But anyway. Buntaro delivers a great quote here about how heroism is for the dead and stories are for children. I was like, oh, that's pretty badass. And this is essentially how we learn that, again, culturally, they don't really look well upon being boastful or bragging. So he then asks for a war story from Blackthorn, who initially refuses, but Mariko, very, very sternly, with knowledge of what will happen if he disobeys a drunken Buntaro, suggests that he tell a story anyway. Make some shit up, don't care, just choose your words carefully. And here's where Blackthorn's stubbornness serves to only widen the cultural divide. He should have accepted that Mariko knows what's best in this situation, considering it is her husband, considering she knows the culture, and considering that every time she gives him advice on how to handle himself culturally, he does something different and everybody ends up fucked over, including himself. He probably should have listened to her and went along with what she said. There was a very obvious change in her demeanor. All the signs were there to listen to Mariko. Instead, he says, no, he wants Buntaro to tell a war story. He says something like, no, you war story, or something like that. He does a bow and arrow gesture. I'm not even going to talk about the 2 arrow shots that Buntaro takes, because, y'all saw that shit. I was on the edge of my seat, man. The way they filmed it with it whizzing past her nose really slowly, it wasn't even about the slow motion or how it was filmed. Everything about that scene is carried by the performance of the actress who plays Mariko. Like, the escalation to the scene was great. The scene itself, how it was shot, great. But how she portrayed Mariko in that moment, that was exceptional, and that's what really pushed that scene over. Like, that was an intense scene, because it was one where it's aided by the fact that she showed no emotion, because anyone else in that scenario would be like screaming, just like Fuji and Blackthorn were. But she and her fucking 8-fold fits, man. That 8-fold fits is made of Valerian steel, y'all. Like, that bitch is that is a sturdy 8-fold fits, man. And internally she's probably jumping around. And she's probably not, because her 8-fold fits is you just got it like that. But she should be acting a certain way, but she is so ingrained in this culture that she can even with her life probably flashing before her eyes, she did not break. And that was, incredible from that actress to be able to do that. Then, as if that's not enough, Blackthorn continues to show that even in the face of overwhelming data, he still doesn't understand the Japanese culture. So he has Mariko translate to Buntaro that he should treat his wife better. I don't know how he thought that was a good idea. I was like, man, this motherfucker has not been paying any attention at all whatsoever, not for a second. Buntaro says for her to tell Blackthorn about her I don't know why I thought it was funny, about her disgusting and filthy family line. And we essentially learned that Mariko's father assassinated the previous Taiko. He felt like he was doing the right thing. That Taiko was corrupt, but whatever, at the end of the day, you assassinated Taiko. It's not going to go well for you. Once her father was caught, he was forced to kill his entire family, except for Mariko, because she had recently married Buntaro, and then kill himself. Then, there's a lot of thens to this story. As if the story's not terrible enough already, Mariko says that on the anniversary of their deaths, she begs Buntaro to let her correct the injustice. Like, just the terminology here. I love how that speaks to the culture. Because the injustice is that she's still alive. Like, to her, that is the injustice. The honor and what is right is for her to be dead along with the rest of her family. Again, I love how that speaks to the culture and educates us and Blackthorn on just how differently they view death. But every year, Butaro refuses and he orders her to live a form of torture that has to be for Mariko and for any Japanese person who feels that way during this time. Like that being like, no, you have to listen to me, and I say that no, you have to live. Like anywhere else is like, oh man, that's so terrible. I have to live. Oh shit. But like for her, like you could tell she's dying inside, and she wants to die on the outside as well. And I don't know. I want to kill myself, but my husband won't let me, so I have to just keep wanting to die but having to live. It like, man, like what is that? Like I said, man, 8 full fists made of Valyrian steel, y'all. Now, this scene has already been great between the drunken shit talking, the arrow, Mariko's story. Still not over. Blackthorn awakens to the sounds of Buntaro beating Mariko, but Buntaro is left before he arrives. We see Mariko lose her cool here and scream for everyone to leave her. And for those of you who've been watching me for a while, why did that scene work so well? Yeah, because they put the fucking work in. We've seen her be stoic as fuck all season. They had a whole episode titled after the concept of bearing your feelings so you can perform your duties. And if they sold 8-fold fences at Walmart, Mariko's face or Toranaga's would need to be on the packaging. So when she says, fuck an 8-fold fence, and loses her shit, it's 10 times more impactful than if they hadn't done the work to establish what kind of person Mariko is. Now that they did, we understand just how wildly out of character that was for her, and thus how hurt and embarrassed she must have been in order to break that character, that stoic character. I mean, excellent fucking work from this actress. I mean, work on building up to that scene to make it impactful. You do that without having established who Mariko is, it's probably still a good scene. But like I said, it's 10 times better when we know how she must be feeling in that moment to let her 8-fold fence down. So, again, incredible scene right there. And then, again, as if this scene hasn't already at this point had us in a chokehold for like 10, 15 minutes, Blackthorn pulls out the toast, because, I mean, hey, it is what it is. Butaro gotta die at this point. And I'm just like, now we're talking business. Blackthorn goes out there with the gun, and then Butaro completely falls into line. He, like, takes off his shoes, he kneels, he lays his sword out, and he apologizes for fucking up the harmony of Blackthorn's house, says, blame it on the sake, baby. I don't know what happened. And as Blackthorn leaves, we see a sly grin on Butaro's face. And knowing there's going to be more greatness between the two of them, I'm really looking forward to that. Another great scene, because it's like, you know he doesn't mean it, but you also know that Blackthorn has to eat shit in that moment. If Butaro had done anything, he probably would have been justified in killing him. Because even if they look at it like, oh, white man killed Butaro, it's like, okay, one, he's been made Hatamoto. Two, there's everybody there who could testify to the fact that Butaro disrespected that man's house, and we've already established how much of a dishonor that is. Like, he could have killed him in that moment had Butaro not completely put on that act. So, like, again, I love the layered nature of that scene. Really, they wrote the shit out this episode, y'all. The last thing I want to talk about, and I touched on it earlier, is how well this episode really put a stamp on the consequences of the cultural divide between Blackthorn and the Japanese. So, this whole situation with the rotting pheasant that he was hanging outside of his house, it was interesting because the whole time I'm wondering, like, where is this going, and what are they going for here? Like, it was like, it was funny at times. Like what Fuji was saying, like, none of his food is gonna touch theirs, and to throw the rest of his stew in the sea, and the way they were reacting to his food and the smell of it, all that was hilarious. But at the same time, I'm like, they're still putting a really strong emphasis on this and giving a lot of time to this pheasant thing, like, just to crack a few jokes. Like, I don't know what's going on here. But again, good writing. I'm gonna have to say it. We saw this same technique employed on Game of Thrones, like these small little mundane things that seem irrelevant but end up mattering immensely later. That was this pheasant plotline. So Blackthorn hangs on to the pheasant He hangs the pheasant outside so it can cure. But the household doesn't like the stench and how the flies are there, and they're gonna upset the harmony of the house and all that. Again, a very commonly used phrase in this episode. He promises it's worth it, and in broken English, he says like, "If touch, die." Like he's not like it wasn't a threat. It was just like he's running. It was like something out of a sitcom, like something somebody would say in a sitcom that's about cultural differences. Like, "Oh, if touch, die." He's like, "Ha ha ha ha." Well, they did it. This ain't a sitcom. The fact that they were already playing it up comedically, though, and continue to do so after that, it really made how this all ended, again, way more impactful and way more shocking. So, again, shout out to the writing on that. When Blackthorn returns and the pheasant is gone, he's like, well, fuck it. It was no biggie anyway. Whatever. Bring homie over here so I can holler at him, man. I was talking to him earlier. He was adjusting that rock in the garden. Yeah, bring him out here so we can chat. And Fuji's like, well, he dead. He dead because you said if someone touched it, they had to die. So it is what it is. And Blackthorn is justifiably enraged. And when he requests to go home, Rigo explains to him how he gave power to those words that he felt were meaningless when he spoke them as Hatamoto. And Blackthorn finally accepts and I think and understands now that it's his fault that this gardener died. And I hope that we see less of Blackthorn not seeing the cultural differences and not over. I want him to kind of lean into the culture a little bit more, like just to show me that the character is learning. Not because I like Blackthorn, I still don't. I want to see the character progression. Like this should be the moment where he understands that his stubbornness and his refusal to adapt to their culture has now cost an innocent gardener his life. Like I want to see him accept that and now going forward adjust his own behavior, just so that the character feels real. I think Blackthorn made a strong point in this scene too, though. Like when he said that they don't value life, only their rituals. Like, and I think that's true. We see a guy in episode 1 voluntarily wipe out his whole bloodline over a perceived insult. Like Blackthorn said at the time, there's no honor in that. Like that kid that he just killed, that kid had no fight. That kid had nothing to prove. That kid had nothing that they need to carry on for him. That was an innocent child. So I thought that was a really great line from Blackthorn. Now, again, mind you, I'm of the belief that there was more intentionality in the gardener's decision than Blackthorn believes there to be, but again, you get the point. I also like how these scenes showcase Fuji as well, too. Like Fuji trying to, I don't even want to say like strike a proper balance between her duties to Blackthorn and her natural cultural tendencies. I don't even think she's trying to strike a balance. I think Blackthorn is her duty is to Blackthorn first and foremost. But I liked her seeing, I liked seeing her trying to like not insult him, but also not fuck with their own customs as well. Like she was towing the line throughout this whole episode of like trying to stay who she is and abide by her culture, but also honor her man. So interesting stuff. The episode ends with a massive earthquake, not the baby one that was in episode 2 or 3. A massive earthquake that wipes out a lot of Yabushiga's village, Toranaga's army, and it nearly swallows up Toranaga himself. Blackthorn saves him, and he loses his swords in this scene. Toranaga does. And Blackthorn offers up his as a replacement. And Toranaga accepts them, but like with a grin that has to indicate that he sees the irony in him accepting swords ritualistically. Swords from a guy that is perceived, Fuji's dad, who is perceived to be a coward, which we learned from Mariko earlier in the episode. We also see the dead Taiko, the Taiko that is dead at the beginning of the series. We also see his wife arrive, Lady, was it Ochida or something like that? I didn't write it down. But the dead Taiko's wife, Widow, arrives in Osaka. And after she emasculates Ishido quite a bit, she says she's taking over now. And even that's intriguing to me. So yeah, a lot to like about this episode. If I did have to offer one criticism, and it's less about the episode and more about the show as a whole, I just kind of feel like I've seen this before. What I mean by that, it's like, it's predictable in its unpredictability. Like, I could guess the twists and turns because I feel like I've seen this show before. It's why I keep mentioning it. I'm just going to say it. It's being executed well for the most part, but I am concerned that this show is going to become pretty much like Samurai Game of Thrones and not Shogun. And I'm not here to try to draw comparisons. They're just there, and they're obvious and they're overt. And I don't know what to say. Like, it's it really feels like Samurai Game of Thrones, and I don't want it to be that. I want it to be its own thing, but I can't help but every episode I watch, I'm reminded of something from Game of Thrones, and not just like, oh, I see a familiar actor. I mean like a way of telling a story, or a specific plot device, or the way they hide a reveal. Like I don't know, man. I just see it a lot. But having said that, again, this episode great. This is the kind of quality. This is the kind of quality I expected from this show, and I kind of expected to be like this going forward. But I do want to close with a couple real quick thoughts. I love Mariko's translations this week between Buntaro and Blackthorn. She makes them both sound much more respectful than they are, but she also tailors the response to the recipient. And I think that's pretty cool, especially, except when she changes shit up and doesn't say what they actually said. But I like how, like, if Blackthorn says something disrespectful, she doesn't just remove the disrespect. She says it to Buntaro in a way that Buntaro would expect to hear as someone of his status, and she does the same thing with Blackthorn. So I don't know. It's the attention to the little details. I like that kind of shit. I also find it pretty amazing how much humor they packed in this episode, given all the terrible shit that happened. Like terrible, like as in like, oh man, that fucking sucks. Not terrible, like it was shitty. That early scene where they were discussing a replacement for Toranaga, and they had the whole the seat would stink of countryside, and then Ishida was like the seat would stink of Christian. Like that little back and forth was dope. And then when they suggested to that one guy, I don't know who they was, they suggested, and then one of the regents said that guy was like syphilis having piece of shit, I don't know, whatever. And Ishido's like, I bet you ain't know it was Ono's cousin, did you? And then it cuts to Ono's mangled black stare face. Like that was hilarious. So yeah, like I said, great episode. Show seems to really be picking up. I'm excited to see where it's going. This episode was like not like what I felt after like that weird boat race scene that ended episode 1 or 2. Like none of that was here. Like this felt like a show that has found its footing. I'm glad it's there early in episode 5. This isn't going to be one of those things where you got to get through season 1. Like this would be a thing where I might be like, the first few, they got some problems, but once you hit like episode 5, it really takes off. That's what I would like for this to be. That's what I expect for this to be. And I will see you guys next week for episode 6. And until then, peace.